In my last video, I taught you how to allow players to upload bug reports, screenshots, and information about their computer to your own Dropbox account so that you can gather lots of feedback and store it in a convenient place. In this video, we're going to build on top of that system and upload analytics about the player's progress to the same Dropbox account. In this tutorial, we're going to simulate 10 players playing 20 levels, and for each level, we'll upload information about how long it took the player to beat the level and how many times they died. Of course, if you want to upload any other information, the system will make it easy to do so. Once we've got all this information from our players, which has been uploaded to Dropbox in the form of a JSON file, I'm going to show you how to very quickly combine each user's data into one Excel file, which you can then analyze in whatever way you want. If you've already watched the last video, you can just open up your project and make the small changes that I'll go through in the first part of this video. But if you haven't watched the last video, go back and watch it if you want to implement this yourself, because you'll need to know how to work with the Dropbox API. As with the last video, if you don't want to write any code, you can just download the package in the description and import it either into a blank GameMaker project or an existing one. This video and the last video were both made on version 2024.6 of GameMaker, but they should work on all recent versions and on future versions as well. As I said, either open up the project you had at the end of the last video or just download the package in the description and import that into a blank project. The only place we're going to be making changes is in the Save Files function and the Save to Dropbox function. Start by opening up the Save Files function. We're going to start by wrapping all the existing code in a repeat loop, which will run 10 times. This is how we'll simulate having 10 users. If you're using this in your actual game, of course you don't want to have any repeat loop. Because we want each user to have a different unique ID number, we can initialize the local variable UID outside of the repeat loop and then randomize it at the start of the repeat loop. Next, just for testing this video, I'm going to put all the code from the last video inside a region and comment it out with Ctrl-K so that it doesn't run. Now I can start writing the code that will upload our analytics. Let's start by initializing a couple of local variables which will be reset for each user. First, make a variable called difficulty base and set it to 1. This will represent the base difficulty of each level and will increase as we progress through the levels. Second, make a variable called skill. This represents the skill of each player and we'll set this to a random decimal number between 0 and 1. We'll add this value to the difficulty. So in effect, our simulation believes that a player with a skill of 0 performed perfectly, whereas a skill value of 1 is the worst performance we'll encounter. Third, we'll initialize an empty array called save data. Then we're going to have another repeat loop inside of this repeat loop, which is going to run 20 times, and this is to simulate adding data for 20 levels. In your game, you don't have to submit data based on levels, you can submit it for any arbitrary checkpoint. Inside of this loop, create a local variable called difficulty, which we'll initially set to difficulty base. Then to this we'll add the skill value, and then we'll add a random decimal number between 0 and 1, which represents how difficult the player is finding that individual level. Next, create a struct called saveEntity, inside which we'll set the time to beat to 5 multiplied by difficulty, and deaths to 50 multiplied by difficulty. The numbers 5 and 50 represent arbitrary values I've picked as our starting points for these values, and then we're going to be multiplying them by difficulty, which remember is a combination of the base difficulty of the level, the player's skill, as well as how difficult they're finding that level. And we're increasing these values based on how difficult our simulated player is finding the level. With that struct created, we can push that to the currently empty array of save data, and just before we leave the repeat loop, increase the base difficulty for the next level by 0.2. After this repeat loop, we're going to deal with saving this data because our simulation for the current user is complete. We need to first determine the file name, which is just going to be analytics plus the user ID.json. Then we're going to convert our array into a JSON string with the function JSON_stringify. Because we're going to be creating a buffer, which is a bit of memory to which we'll write this JSON file, we need to determine its size. So let's create a local variable called size, which will be equal to the byte length of the string we just initialized above, plus 1. The plus 1 ensures that there's space for an extra character which GameMaker adds in when we save the file. Then we can create this buffer with the function bufferCreate, passing in the size, bufferFixed, and 1 as arguments. We can write the string to the buffer with the function bufferWrite, and finally we can save the buffer with the function bufferSave, passing in the buffer and the file name as arguments. The last step in this function is to create a local variable with the current version of the game, which we'll set to 0.0.1. This can be whatever the current version of your game is. It's useful to set this up because we're going to be automatically creating a new folder in Dropbox for each version of our game. That way we can compare analytics from different versions of our game without getting them all mixed up. So now we can establish the directory where we'll be saving this file. It's just going to be /version/analytics, so that inside our Dropbox app folder, there will be a folder for each version of the game, and inside each of those folders will be a folder containing all of the analytics.json files. Finally, use the function save to Dropbox, passing in the file and the directory as arguments. Now, if you middle-click that save to Dropbox function, it will open that up. The only edit we need to do here is to add an extra argument for the directory, which will default to a /. Then we can add in this argument before our file name when we're initializing the path. That's all the coding we need to do in GameMaker, so click F5 or the Run button, and when the game loads, click the S key. In the debug log, you'll see the first message will start with access token, and then 10 more messages will come out which start with name. So if you now go to Dropbox.com, go into the apps folder, and inside of the folder for your app, you'll see another folder with the name of the version you entered in GameMaker, and inside of that folder will be another folder called Analytics. Open the Analytics folder and you'll see 10 JSON files. If you click on one of these, you can see that they each contain an array containing 20 structs representing the time to beat and the amount of deaths for each level. What you want to do is select all of these and download them. A zip folder will be downloaded and you can just extract this to wherever you want. Next, go to rooksword.github.io/gmanalytics-json-combiner, and the link for that will be in the description. This is a website I've coded to take all of the analytics JSON files and combine them into one file which you can open in Excel. All you have to do is click Choose Files and select all 10 files that you downloaded. Now click the second button which says Generate All Data, and a file called data.json will be downloaded. So with that file downloaded, open up Excel. I'm using the Office 365 version of Excel, but the steps should be similar on most versions of the software. And you don't even have to use Excel if you have a different preferred piece of software which can turn JSON data into charts. Open a blank workbook, navigate to the Data tab, select Get Data in the top right, hover over From File, and select From JSON. This will open up a window to choose a file, so select the data.json file that the website downloaded. Power Query Editor will now appear, and just click Into Table in the top left. Then you'll see a column called Value, and on the right of the word Value will be a small button. Press that and click OK. Then 2 new columns will appear. Click the small button at the top of each of these columns and click Extract Values. Select comma from the drop-down list to be your delimiter, and then repeat this process for the other column. Now just click Close and Load in the top left. This is going to create a new tab for a new sheet, inside of which is a table. Now underneath the table that appears, add some labels like deaths, name, and the levels, and then copy the file names down. Copy those labels and paste it underneath and just change deaths to time to beat. Then in the deaths table, underneath level 1, type equals text split, open bracket, B2, comma, speech mark, close bracket, and drag that down to the end of this set. Repeat that for the time to beat table and just type C2 instead of B2. Select all the numbers in the deaths table and press Ctrl+C to copy and press Ctrl+Shift+V to paste the actual values. Then click on the yellow warning and click Convert to Number, and do the same for the time to beat table. Now, if you select the deaths chart and navigate to the Insert table, and then select the Scatter Chart option and the top left option, a chart will be created to represent the average deaths. We can create the same chart for average time to beat by selecting the table and repeating the process. Now you have 2 charts which plot every player's deaths and time to beat for each level. This might be interesting because you can potentially see one colored dot appearing consistently at the top, which would mean that your best players are always performing well. Or you may see colored dots randomly appearing near the top or bottom of each column, which would indicate that there's a lot of randomness determining how players do in each level. You can format these charts however you want to make them easily readable and nice to look at, but the main point is that you can now look at this chart and assess the difficulty curve of your game. Of course, deaths and time to beat are not the be-all and end-all statistics for your data analysis, but just for our example it works. Generally, we can see that the data trends upwards, which is what we might expect, because a game's levels often get harder and longer as a game progresses. And if we wanted to double down on this trend, our next steps would be to look at any outliers and try to determine why they exist, if we want to change it, and how we might change it. I'm going to have to draw to a close now because the scope of this video is just how to collect the data and open it in Excel. Data analysis is a whole different topic, which rightfully has many other high-quality videos dedicated to it. In particular, there are a few good ones on the GDC YouTube channel, which I'll link to below. A few points I'll raise just before I finish is that it's never ideal to rely on one solution. There are plenty of other ways to get analytics about your game, whether those are solutions you can make yourself or solutions you have to rely on a third party for. Nevertheless, there are always quirks with any solution, and it can be really helpful to have two sources of analytics to compare. Along these lines, with any implementation of analytics, there's a risk that developer error will lead to inaccurate data. There's also a risk that your data just won't be useful for many reasons, just one being that you don't have enough players to make up a decent sample size. There's also the risk that you'll just analyze the data incorrectly. All I'm getting at is that analytics aren't a magic bullet that are going to solve all of your problems, but they can be an essential part of your toolkit. With all that said, I hope you leave this video with a good understanding of how you could get started with analytics today without any super complex system. If there's something I could have explained better, please leave a comment. With that said, I hope this video will be useful for any of your future game projects. Please like and subscribe and click the bell to get notified about all of my future videos.